The marriage trap. Have you ever been caught out in marriage? Well, there's a thing called the Vietnamese marriage trap, and today I'm going to tell you all about it. So what is the Vietnamese marriage trap? Easy. Girl, foreign boy, Vietnamese girl, of course, foreign boy, get married, boy loses everything, and girl moves back with her family and has a nice life. That's the marriage trap. So let me tell you all about it. All right, so when I talk about the marriage trap, we've got to identify who we're talking about here. So let's break it up. If you are a male, you are mainly from Korea, South Korea, of course, America, Australia, England, Japan. It's not locked into just Western males. But if you are from the major countries that marry into Vietnamese families, and I say families because that will have meaning soon, you are probably about 40 years to 55 years of age, maybe a bit younger, maybe a bit older, and you are probably a bit overweight, mildly successful in your career, not terribly successful. And when I say mildly successful, you've maybe run your own small business, or you've spent time in the army, or you've done something, factory worker, but you've made your money and you've achieved in the area that you want, but not overly successful like a lawyer or a doctor or an entrepreneur or anything like that. You're just a pretty knockabout average guy who's worked hard. That's the person I'm talking about. Oh, and of course, you're bloody lonely. So does that sound like you? Because if that sounds like you, you're the person that I want to talk to today when we talk about the marriage trap. Because the marriage trap is about Western and Asian men outside of Vietnam, and this applies equally to places like the Philippines, Thailand, and other developing countries. If you walk into these countries, you are going to be the honeypot. You are the golden ticket to anybody who sees a way out of their current situation. And it gets even deeper than that. So the reason I say it gets even deeper is because over here, you've got moneybags man, the moneybags male, right? And over on this side, you've got the female. Now, just like I described the male to you, who is the female? Well, in my opinion, the female is in Vietnam, that is, and we can talk about other countries as well. They're probably reasonably similar, but they could vary a little bit from country to country. But as a guy who's lived in Vietnam for 13 years, who is that woman that you're going to hook up with here in Vietnam? She's probably about 25 to 35 years old, may have one child or no children. Her family, I'll talk more about the family in a moment, but her family either lives on the fringe of a city, or is a rural resident. Their family has traditional roots that place them in a rural setting, because here in Vietnam, the rural community versus the city community, they're very, very different socioeconomic levels, The woman herself is either working in a bar, in a shop, in a cafe, or has some low-paid, predominantly uneducated type of role. She hasn't been to university and possibly had finished school, but hadn't gone any further. This is the type of woman that we're looking at when we're talking about the Vietnamese woman that you are going to get hooked up with. Now, I've only really told you about 2/3 of my assessment of the woman. There is 1/3 that's missing. Family. Yes, family. Oh, the big one. So, having been here for a long time, I can safely tell you that the family unit is more important than religion. The family unit is more important than basically anything. You talk about the concepts of giving your last dollar to somebody. The family unit is that type of unit where if you had $1 left and your cousin or your uncle or your sister or brother, mother, whatever, says, I need $1, then they would give them that last dollar. That's how strong the family unit is. And if you find that the girl comes from one of these very strong family units, it's not to say that it will be a guaranteed, but it's another passive sign that you are walking into a money trap. Because I've never seen it so strong as I have in Vietnam. And I understand the roots of it. You think about Vietnam, the modern Vietnam is only 50 odd years old post-war. Before that, they went through generations of war. The America conflict, World War II, the French conflict, and the Chinese conflict. There's been one after the other. You understand how people bind together in their family unit for survival. Whilst a half a century has rolled on, that hasn't changed. And again, because for most of that 50 years, Vietnam was a very, very poor country. And so the family unit was one that held together and was there for survival. And it hasn't changed. Poor communities are still seeing any way out. And that includes old moneybags man, the golden ticket, us. Let me just recap. You've got the lonely male with a bit of cash from another country. You've got the undereducated 20, 30-something-year-old woman who has a family behind her that she's responsible for and has a reluctance to marry anyone Vietnamese because they just don't have money. They're not marrying, or they're not wanting to have a relationship for love so much. It's a way of securing a better future. So where do we go from there with regards to the money trap? Well, again, there's two pathways from that point. One pathway is that, you meet someone, get married, move out of Vietnam back to your home country, and life goes on. You're sending money back to the family, but life goes on. The other one is you get married, very quickly you have a baby. One of the key indicators, they will quickly talk about marriage and having a baby, because once you have a baby under Vietnamese law, you're stuffed. The baby is essentially the ticket to the future. And and that's the reason why you might find that you'll find a woman who's maybe early 30s and she's got one child, because she's tried it on, had a baby, and it hasn't worked out, and she's going around for round two. Especially if that baby has a father who is not Vietnamese. It's a big red flag. So the Vietnamese law is not particularly set up to support the challenges of a foreign husband if things go bad in the marriage. All right, so I'm probably going a bit too fast here. Let me go back to that. You get married, things are great, you have a baby, money's going back to mum and the family in the countryside, out in Tay Ninh or Cu Chi or somewhere, whatever. Then one day you run out of money. You haven't been working for a while because you quit your job in America or wherever, and you moved to Vietnam to be with your wonderful wife and your newborn baby, and you run out of money. What do you do then? That's when things start going bad. On a positive side, the most positive possible, she sends you back home to go back to work, and you find that you're living in a caravan or a trailer park or something, and you're earning moderate wages as a truck driver or whatever, and you're sending half of it over here to basically feed her family. On the pretense that you're supporting your child, but you're feeding her whole family. That's what happens. In the worst case scenario, she tells you to go jump and you go to court and you spend every cent you have trying to get access to your child, trying to fight the system, and you are just, you are, as we say in Australia, you are pushing shit uphill, mate, because you're going to get nowhere. It is a bitter, bitter end. What I'm saying, if you're still with me and you're one of those men that I've just described and you're listening, be very, very careful. Put your loneliness away, put your dick away, disregard the fact that they're very, very beautiful and much younger than you, and think logically before you move into a relationship, because it's just going to end up terrible. I had, in the years before I got married, I lived in Vietnam for I think it was 7 or 8 years before I actually got married. So I have plenty of experience with girlfriends, and you can see them. They come from a mile away. They will talk very quickly about supporting, give me money. I need money for this. I need money for that. I need money for my kid if they got a kid and it's not yours. And then they will be very quick to say, my mum has cancer, or my dad has had a heart attack, or my brother's fallen off his motorbike. They would be very quick to raise these problems and then start asking for money. And from that, once you start in that process, it's unfortunate. I'm going to be really crass. It's no different to a Nigerian scammer. Once you start paying the money, it'll just keep rolling week after week after week after week. And it has no end until your pockets are empty. Don't get caught in the marriage trap, okay? Don't think that the Vietnamese laws are here to help you. They're not. Divorce in Vietnam is very much more of a prove to me who is the best to take care of the child. And the presumption for any Vietnamese child is that the Vietnamese partner will be better off. And I swap that around. If you happen to be a female and you've married a Vietnamese man, the same will apply. You will go to the court in time of divorce and separation thinking that, I'm the mother. The pretense is the mother gets the baby. Not in Vietnam. It's the one who's most capable of looking after the baby, usually financially, but that will also have a big, the big weight will be to the Vietnamese parent. So you're pushing shit uphill if you think you're going to succeed. The simple solution: don't have a baby, don't get married in the first place. You look at the red flags. What's the family relationship like? The family relationship's not bad. And it's good to have a good family relationship. My wife has an amazing relationship with her family. They are good people. And honestly, they are also country people. They are from the countryside. So, here I am kind of like describing the family, but I'm actually describing the family of my wife in a way. But the other red flags haven't occurred, and they didn't occur before I got married. So totally different. Talking about a baby, I don't make any reference to my personal situation in this video because my personal situation is totally outside that. I've lived in this situation throughout those first 7 or 8 years of my life where I met girls and went through the checklist and went, no way. There was one particular girl, I won't say her name, but she said to me basically, if you can't buy a house in Vietnam for me to live in, we are not going any further. What's that? And she was quite serious. We'd only been going out for maybe a month. And she just said to me straight out, if you can't buy a house for me to live in, it's going nowhere. And sure enough, it went nowhere. I had a couple of girlfriends, one in particular from Vin City. She had the brother trick, and my brother's lost his job and needs to have an operation. Can you give me some money? I'll pay you back next week. I think that was 2019. It's now 2026. I'm still waiting for the money. So it happens like that. But on the other side, I've had some very, very honourable and decent girlfriends. I had one girlfriend there in Dom Nay. She ran a small business, and she actually borrowed money off me probably about it must be at least 8 times. Reasonably small amounts, 5 million, 7 million and the like. And they were to pay off her accounts so she could get more product to sell to keep the shop going. And it was a risk, but you know what? Every single time she paid me back on the day. So she'd say, look, I'm flying to Thailand today. Can you lend me 5 million and I will pay it back to you next Wednesday? And sure enough, next Wednesday morning, the money was there. And I never had a problem with her. And after the first couple of times, she was just really trustworthy and a good person. Again, she was almost within the scope. She was in her mid-30s. She actually had 2 children. But her husband was Vietnamese and they'd been divorced. And her mother was a doctor and they didn't live in the countryside. And I could see that she was not within that mold. We didn't continue for other reasons, other personal reasons. It wasn't that she was a bad person. There are good people here. This is not a blanket statement. I'm harping on a little bit about this now. I would be honest to say probably a majority. So there's 20,000 marriages a year in Vietnam between a foreigner and a Vietnamese citizen. 95% of them are a foreign male and a Vietnamese woman. Of that 95% of the 20,000, probably a good 50% of them would not fit inside the parameters that I've spoken about today. They would either be, professionals marrying, maybe really old people. When I say really old, I shouldn't say because I'm pretty bloody old myself. But, a 70-year-old fella meets a 55-year-old woman, and they're both grandparents or whatever. And it's just a marriage of, not convenience, but a marriage of their twilight years. It happens. Again, occasionally you'll find a very young girl get married. And again, does it fit the criteria? Is she undereducated? Does she come from the countryside? And so there's genuine marriages, there's many genuine marriages, but I would say to be 50-50. And I could tell you some stories about people that I know firsthand that fit into both criteria. So, you've got to be very, very aware. Let's look at the red flags. This is what you look for, okay? Number 1, is she undereducated? Number 2, 25 to 35. Number 3, 0 or 1 child. Number 4, family are from a low socioeconomic background and live in poor conditions in a rural area. And number 5, the big one, money, marriage, and having babies is the primary concern, and it's something that is turned to very, very early in your relationship. All right? If you've ticked all 5 of those boxes, guys, just be very, very careful. And the one obvious one for any marriage in Vietnam or anywhere in the world for that matter, do not rush into the marriage, okay? Don't get married because you want a TRC or something like that. Don't get married for any other reason other than you have had your courtship period and it's the right decision. For me personally, I would suggest that would be a good 2 years or so minimum. So you can scope out the relationship and know that it's the right person. But do not come here, meet a girl, have a raging bloody relationship, get married in 3 months, she's already pregnant, and you find that when you end up with a 0 bank balance back in your home country. That's what happens, okay? All right, guys, I hope you've taken this advice very well. I've just seen it, I can't keep on telling. I have seen it personally, so don't do it, okay? If you need any advice, give me a yell. My email is in the comments below, and I'm happy to talk to you if you need some help, okay? I'm Ray, An Aussie in Vietnam. See you next time. Bye-bye.